Okay, just testing everything, making sure everything's good. All right, great. And we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tales from a Wanderer. As always, my name's Oliver Sanchez, professional wilderness guide and all-round outdoorsman. So today, well, first, a couple housekeeping things. You might have noticed that we didn't run last week, and this is, kind of like a weird time. It's about 2 on a Friday, pretty chilly out. But, the show might be switching times, so, you know, keep an eye out for it. It'll always be on YouTube, though, but it might be switching and jumping around times. So, this week, I would like to talk a little bit about a couple more stories. First one is from, again, time up in Canada. So, as I said, I led two trips. So, one was kind of the easiest trip that you can take when you're first going up there. It's called an Excalibur trip. It's very easy, 2 week trip. You probably only travel, excuse me, probably only travel, about, I don't know, 50, 60 kilometers. And then the second trip that I led was, of course, the river trip, and it was probably more like 400 to 500 kilometers. So, two pretty huge ranges I had in my in leading trips this year. And basically, the first one that I did was, the Excalibur trip, and we kind of I didn't really know what to expect going into it, but I had heard a lot about it. So, one of my best friends who me and him had also been going up there for a long time, me and him um went through the Excalibur trips, and he did an Excalibur last year in Minnesota, and he came back with all these crazy stories of, kids climbing all over everything and, doing like all this crazy ridiculous stuff. And so I was like, "Oh boy, you know how interesting is this trip really going to get? Like how crazy is this really going to be?" And it turned out it was pretty crazy. It was nuts, to to say the least. So basically, to start off the trip, mainly my story focuses on um kind of, I don't know, it was probably day 6 or 7. We'd been in there for a while, and we'd just gotten back onto Temagami. And so, we're kind of all the kids are probably between 10 and 11. We did the slightly older group, and then there was a younger group that was led by a group of 3. And we kind of like, we're making camp, and it's the most beautiful campsite you've ever I've ever seen. I never camped there. And it had this like rock wall embankment where we were cooking, and it was on like all these stones, and it was slate, and it was kind of all these rocks had built up, almost like if you'd ever seen like a sweat lodge, there's hot rocks right outside of it. That was kind of what it looked like. And then there were 2 fire pits for cooking. And so we kind of built them up a little bit more, but they were perfect, like perfect for our grill, and it was awesome for the grills. And so we're kind of having a pretty relaxing time. Me and my leader partner, we're chatting, and since the group is a little older, you know, they're basically keeping themselves entertained. And we're kind of cooking and making food. It's probably, it's only 5 o'clock, right? Like we're not in any rush, and we're waiting for actually a rendezvous for a Voyager, which is kind of much bigger canoe. It's going to hold the whole trip, and we're going to paddle up with the Voyager up to base camp. And so we're kind of cooking, and I'm watching the fire, and we're cooking a large pot of lentils. So the large pot's probably, you know, 2, maybe a foot, tall. It's a big pot, right? And we're also sauteing some onions, and like trail food, especially for the younger group, like it's got to be good, right? Because they're a little picky, and they don't really want to eat that much, and all this kind of stuff. So we're doing that, and we're cooking. We're kind of laughing and chatting, and all of a sudden, the whole fire pit on my side collapses. So like the whole right side just like fell off and towards me. So I'm kind of like leaping back out of the way, right? Because, well, hot soup basically coming towards me. And all the pots are sliding towards me. So kind of grab my Leatherman and grab this pot, right? And so I'm holding this pot here, and it's pretty heavy. Like usually you have like two people lift this pot up, and I've got this pot kind of clenched in my hand, right? And all the other pots are moving around. And so you go into like, okay, stress mode, right? Like there's kind of especially for the trip leaders, like a lot of your job is to fix problems, right? So you got to be on top of your game, you got to fix problems, like you just got to be constantly, you're always fixing problems, fixing issues, kind of doing all that kind of stuff. And so um you know, we're I've got the pot in one hand and the whole fire pit's collapsed. So I'm like, okay, fine. So the kids are like, "Oh no, not the fire pit," right? And to me, this is like big issue. Might lose our food. Yeah, all this stuff that's like not very good. Like I might get burned. Like all this kind of stuff. And the kids are like, "Ah, this is so much fun," and you're just thinking, please step back. And so the fire pit collapses and the pot kind of rolls off. So I grab the pot and then I'm like, okay, whatever. Grab the grill and level it. Right. So the grill is level again, and we're kind of just holding it there. And if you've ever cooked lentils, right? Lentils at home, super easy. Like the easiest thing. You just put boiling water on and put the lentils in, they cook. Really easy, right? Anyone can do that. Here, however, when you're on trail, lentils are really hard to cook because you have no control over the heat, right? Because the fire is going to do whatever it feels like doing. Right. So like we were like, okay, we'll just keep it on. Like we only have so much longer to go. And I'm holding the grill. I've got the grill in one hand and I'm still stirring the pot of lentils. I'm like, please don't burn to the bottom. That's like your worst nightmare. I've got the grill and the left side collapses. Right. So the sauteed onions now slip off the left side of the grill. And so my leader partner, after, swearing a little bit, basically just grabs the other side of the grill and we're holding it up and the back is fine because the back is all up against basically like the huge slate wall, and there's no way that we can like readjust our grill. There's no way at all that you can move it. Like we had Bannock's cooking in the other fire, which is like yeastless bread. I'll talk more about that. We had Bannock's cooking in the other fire, so it's hot and we're holding the grill and things are slipping around and I'm still trying to stir this large pot, and like all of a sudden our like very peaceful kind of day had gone crazy, like absolutely nuts basically. Because one thing had happened and then everything had basically dominoed, and now we've got soup everywhere. And you know that's kind of what happens on these trips. Like you'll be expecting one thing to happen and then everything will change instantly, and you'll just get like this domino effect, and all of a sudden all these things are happening. And it happened a lot on this trip where like everything would be fine and then boom, everything would happen. So we're in the middle of this, right? And of course one thing can't go wrong because multiple things have to go wrong. So earlier that day, kids were complaining, their tents smell, right? Which is a completely normal thing. Tents smell, basically, right? Because you're on trail for 10 days, like you smell, the tent smells, like you're dirty, nothing is clean, basically. Nothing is clean. So of course, we're, still going, right? Nothing's clean, right? So yeah, where was I? Oh, right. We're at the kind of end of the day, right? And my leader partner gives the kids like an incense. So, it's a little stick, it burns at one end and it smells nice basically. And he was like, "Okay, just go sit in the tent with it and basically just just leave it there. Like, just hold it, just it's fine, like it's hot. Like don't put it in the bottom of the tent." I specifically remember him saying, don't put it in the bottom of the tent, right? That would make sense. It's hot. It's going to go right through the tent. So as we're kneeling over the fire, hot, like it's just the worst situation. One of the kids, the kid who we had given the incense to, comes up behind me, right? And he's like, trip leader? They're so young. They'll just call you trip leader or, whatever basically cuz you're the authority figure out there, right? Like you're they're basically their parent out there. So they'll call you, trip leader or they call me Ollie a lot and the kid comes up and he's like, "Trip leader? Um, you know, like I burned a hole in the tent and I turned and I was like, You did what?" He's like, "Yeah, I put the incense on the ground and it burned a hole in the tent." And there was this moment of pause and I stopped. I stopped stirring the pot and my leader partner stopped sauteing the onions and we looked at him and we said, "You did what?" Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Just go away. Just go away. Like we'll deal with that later, right? Because the grill had collapsed. Like the tent wasn't, you know, that big of an issue at the time. So I just remember thinking, like, of course, like what else could possibly go wrong? Luckily, nothing else did. But the kid really, after I had pulled the lentils off and we had stopped cooking basically, and we were like, okay, we're gonna serve. Like, hang on, let's go look at the tent, basically. We go look at the tent, and it's a small hole. It's only that big. And we're looking at this tent, and we're like, "Did you not know it was hot?" And the kid, n no joke, no, looks us dead in the eyes and says, "Well, yeah, usually at home we have a holder." So you know that the end's hot. He knew that the end was hot, but he still decided to just put it right on the ground. I was laughing so hard because it was one of those situations where clearly, like, either me or my leader partner or someone hadn't communicated to him that he was the holder of the of the incense, and so it was very funny just being like, but it's hot," and he was like, "Yeah, yeah, I know it's hot, like, usually we've," like, it was definitely like a it was just in the moment, it was just so funny and so ridiculous, and that, like, encompassed the whole trip, right? Because they would just say, "I absolutely love the group, though. They were so much fun. 10 to 11, like the perfect age." And I remember my Excalibur trip and just remembering like the joy and the excitement and like, the true like adventure, right? Because it's your first canoe trip, first time being away from home, and it's a huge adventure and it's so much fun. And so I remember that and I was like, I hope I can give these kids like the same experience that I had, right? Where I was like out there in the wild and just didn't really care. And so that kind of summed up the trip. And there were a whole bunch of other stories, and I will definitely be sharing them. Things like my leader partner actually didn't arrive until the day two no 2 days, sorry, 2 days before we were supposed to leave. So I outfitted everything. I made a route plan. Like I did all this stuff. Like I'm you know just ridiculous things that happen when you're running a canoe camp in northern Ontario, right? So that was our first story, a little Canadian action happened this summer. But second story is actually much more recent, and it came when me and my roommate. So we're big skiers and we skied all last winter, and that was super fun. And then we kind of decided, hey, we should try hiking. So I'm a big hiker. You've heard some of my stories of the Appalachian Trail and running into bears and seeing eagles and all that stuff. And I absolutely love hiking. But around here it's really hard. We're in New Rochelle. Like it's pretty difficult to get out and actually see anything. So basically what happened was we were like, okay, we want to kind of, get out of here again. So a couple weeks ago, before the rowing season started, before we were kind of in, you know, doing practice and training and doing all that 6 times a week, um, me and him and one of our friends from actually the rowing team as well, we decided, hey, let's go on a hike, right? Like it's going to be fun and it's going to be easy, and we can kind of relax after Saturday practice, basically, right? So, you know, get up on Sunday. It's like, I don't know, probably 7 in the morning. Yeah, it was an early wake up. It's so worth it though. But it was an early wake up, and we drove probably just about an hour north. And that's when you kind of get out of the suburban rush and of everyday life here, and you get into some pretty cool, pretty neat mountains up by Storm King, and they're absolutely beautiful. And so my roommate had planned out the route, and I always say that his adventures, you better pack for, two. Basically, imagine a 2-hour adventure. It will probably turn into a 5-hour adventure, and that's exactly what happened here. So I was basically like my pack was my normal Black Diamond pack that I absolutely love, and it's like the best pack. I've had it for 5 years now. And then I was carrying 3 liters of water, rain jacket, right, thermal, like fleece, like all the stuff you need. Like even if it was 95 this day, which is an important fact. Even if it was 95 and hot and sunny and beautiful, you never know what's going to happen. I definitely learned that on trail this year. Things can switch really quickly. So I was packing all my gear, my med kit. And then of course I learned my lesson a lot with the bear. And when I didn't have my long lens on me, and I was like, I have to have my wildlife lens on me at all times when I'm hiking. So my pack is heavy, right? It's probably, I don't know, 6, 7 pounds, probably. Well, maybe closer to 9. This is a heavy pack. Okay. Which is important. It's a heavy pack, and I was expecting this to happen, right? So we get there, we're having a great time, we're all in high spirits. Get out of the car, like I get my bag on. First incident of the day, my roommate's bladder, his water bladder, basically. Sometimes they're called camelbacks. The technical name is a bladder. Had burst all over his back seat. So that's like the biggest issue with them, is that it's basically just plastic and it holds water. If you put too much pressure on them, they like break really easily. They're super easy to break. And obviously it had taken a turn just too wide, and it had just burst all over the place, right? So I was like, oh man, my bag's wet now. Like, whatever. Like, of course it's mostly dry on the inside, right? Like my camera wasn't in it, luckily. Um, and so finally, right, I like put my bag on, it's wet. I'm like, oh, like this isn't really how I wanted to start this, but whatever. Like, I'll be fine. Like, I know what I'm doing. So of course, start on the hike, and we start going up, and it's a pretty good incline, right? And we're working, but we're all athletes, right? We're all rowers. Like we know what we're doing. Like, come on, seriously. So we're going up, and we're chatting, and we're chilling, and maybe 6 minutes in, not even, giant sign on the side of the trail. It just says, "Do not climb in adverse weather conditions." And we were like, "What? Do not climb in adverse weather conditions?" And like me and um my other friend, who's actually also my roommate, so this could also be confusing. But me and my other friend, right? We were like, don't climb in an adverse condition. Like, what are you talking about? And my roommate's like, my direct roommate is like, well, it might be a little steep up there. We were like, oh, this is turning into an adventure, huh? It's when we got to it, the rock face, it was just a cliff, like a straight up cliff, basically. And there was one tiny root which was spray painted on. That's how you know it was tight. No trees, barren, and it was just straight up. So you were looking up and up and up and up and up, and you're like, "Whoa!" I think we gained close to 1,000 feet in like 45 minutes, but it was backbreaking. So my roommate wasn't carrying anything, right? So he's up front, he's kind of blazing trail, and he's like, "I know where to go." And I'm the second one, right? And I have my super heavy pack on. I also was carrying my tripod. I remember that. I was carrying my tripod as well, because for any sort of basically for any sort of landscape shots, it's nice to have a tripod on you. So carry my tripod as well. So my bag was probably 10 to 11 pounds. So it's heavy, and I'm going up a cliff wall. I'm not like the happiest person at the moment, but I'm on an adventure. What could be better? Like, I don't really care about anything else. So we're scrambling up this cliff wall, and there's a whole bunch of moves which are really testing mine and my friends, behind me, flexibility. And there was this one move where you had to have one hand on the left, so it's like a shoot, and there's no switchbacks. It was just straight up. And the first part was like a little bit of boulder hopping, and then it got into like more sheer, and there was just this shoot, and it was too wide to do like a true like press on either side. So you had to put your right foot on the right wall basically, and put your left hand on the left wall, and then hook your left foot over, um, and then roll onto it. Right? So my roommate does this no problem, and I, like, struggle and, like, get my chest over it, and I'm like like, I'm breathing deep. I'm, like, sucking in breath, right? Because we're climbing, and I got a heavy pack on. Well, what would you expect? So we're climbing, climbing, and, that's a technical section, and then, um, we kinda there's, like, this small switchback, um, and all of a sudden, off the right side, a ton of exposure. So exposure is when, you're really close to, like, a spine, or, like, a spine of a mountain, the ridge of a mountain, or, all of a sudden, it's, like, sheer on one side, and you're really close on the other. So it's this super narrow footpath, and we're, like, hunched up. Like, I have a full-on death grip on one side of the mountain. We're hunched up all the way, pressed to one side, basically, trying not to fall off. And then to make the next ledge up was a shoot, so, like, a true shoot. Like, it basically made a V, and you had to, like, place both knees and then place, your elbows in it. And it was a little bit like, canyoneering in, New Mexico, which I've also done, where you have to or slot canyoning, where you kind of have to, especially when you're sliding down something, you kinda press everything out, and you kinda spider yourself, and you slowly descend, and it was like that except going up, so it was way harder, of course. Um, and so, like, we're going up, and, still climbing, and you've got the press on, and you're going up, and you've got exposure to your right, like, full on 1,000-foot drop, 2,000-foot drop on your right, and then to your left is just sheer rock, and you've got a chute right in the middle. And so we make it up the chute, and then it switchbacks around, and we make it up to like a flag, and we're like, how did they even manage to get this up here? It's like a flagpole. There's a flag at the top. I think it was the U.S. flag, but we get there, and we're like, yes, awesome. We've climbed it. Like, we're feeling great. I've made it to the top. I'm dripping sweat. I've sweat through this shirt multiple times over. It's 95 degrees out. But yes, we made it. Snap a couple photos. I have some good photos from that hike, actually. Get a couple photos. Life is good, as you would assume, right? Of course, what we hadn't realized is I turned around, and I was so focused on this awesome view. We were right by the Hudson. You could see Storm King right across from you. And we turn around, and it's just another cliff again, just another cliff that we have to go up again. So I'm going up another cliff now, and I'm not regretting life choices at the moment, but I'm definitely regretting him making the route, because you can't. To give you an idea, right? The trail was only one way, because if you came down the other way, you would not make it down. It was impossible to descend on this trail. You could only go up. So it's really steep. It's stupid steep. We're going up. We're going up, right? And I wish I brought my poles for this. I wish I brought my hiking poles, because that would have made life so much easier. So we're going up, we're climbing, and you're doing full on, like, not crimps, not like a full crimp, but you've got like good like jugs basically that you're holding on to. Um, and jugs are basically it's they've got nice holds. Like, the whole face had like really nice holds, and there was good holds for your feet too. Climbing up, right? Get to a second part. Okay. Like, yes, We made it. Oh, epic, guys. Well done. And there are these people who we had caught up to, and they were in like full. I mean, this made me just feel bad. There was also three of them, and one of them was in like full collared shirt, like business attire collared shirt, and like a fanny pack, right? And then there was a woman who was in like jeans and like kind of like slip-on shoes. And then there was another dude who was in like a full sweater, like just a full like knit sweater. So we had a good laugh at them. Um, it was so ridiculous, and they were like, "Oh, this is a pretty hard hike, but what about the next section?" We're like, "The next section? What do you mean the next section? Like this is it? What are you talking about? No, like we've made it to the top, right?" And we're looking at the altitude profile, and we're like, "Oh, we're not at the top." And we turn around, and like there's another peak, and we thought we'd be going around it. And another peak, and on the peak, going up a little switchback, are more people. And there was kind of this sigh of like, oh, okay, whatever. You know what? We're having too much fun. We were having an absolute blast. I mean, it was so much fun. We were like rock climbing and like scrambling up these cliffs, and we were like, this is everything I ever wanted. So we keep going. We're still going. We're still climbing. I feel incredible, first off. We're still climbing and going and going and going. And kind of, you know, finally make it onto a ridge line, and we start making really good time, right? Because ridge line, it's easy. We start getting really back far into the forest. Can't hear the highway anymore. Can't hear a road. It's just the birds, like really peaceful, really nice. Much different from North Avenue, if any of you are familiar with it, which is just a highway that basically goes right through campus. And I swear someone's house burns down every night. There's just every night someone's house burns down. So we're going, uh, making on the ridge, start making good time, we're chilling. The route originally was 6 miles, which is pretty hard. 6 miles took us 45 minutes to climb the first half. So 6 miles, pretty hard terrain, pretty hard trail. So we were estimating like 2.5, 3 hours basically for this. But we're making such good time that we're like, well, why don't we add on something? And it would only be like 3 more miles, right? Like, what could be better? And we wanted to go up to the fire tower. And there was a fire tower up there, and it was maybe, one half. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. It was mile and a half up, mile and a half down. Right, perfect. We can go, go to the fire tower, like see the views from up there. It's gonna be great. We're all feeling good. I'm eating bars now because I knew that the adventure would take longer than it actually would, because of course it does. It's one of my roommate's adventures, right? It always takes longer. Whenever we were skiing too, whatever craziness he'd decide to get us into, which was also fun, would always take longer than you're really expecting. But we're climbing again. We like go down for a little bit. We descend maybe 400 or 500 feet, and then climb up again, and it's just steps, like carved into the side of a mountain face. And you're going up, and you're like, okay, my hamstrings are on fire. My feet, I can't feel them anymore. They're probably bleeding. I can't feel anything going on, right? My hamstrings are on fire. It's like we've been hiking for like 3.5 hours now. And we're like, oh man, like where's the fire tower? Like if we don't see it soon, like we'll just turn back. We'll just turn back. Finally see the fire tower. And me and my friend climb it. And it's beautiful up there. We can see West Point across the way, and there's little boats on the water, and the Hudson's cutting through the land, and Storm King's right there, and it was absolutely beautiful. Snapped a couple photos up there, and then we were like, okay, we have now like what was essentially probably another 2.5 miles to go. So we climb down the steps again. My knees are about to just pop right out. Like they hurt so much because you're carrying a heavy pack, and I had been lightening it because I had been drinking water, and um I'd been eating, and you're starting to lighten it, and you'll never expect how heavy water is. It's starting to lighten it, and your knees are just hurt so much. Anyone who's been on any kind of serious hike, like a through hike or multi-day hiking, or even this one, will know your knees just start to go on you. So we're walking down, and we finally get on like less steep terrain, basically. And we're like, oh yes, like, knees can take a break, like everything's gonna be fine. And then we proceed to go up and down and up and down and up and down. And it's like little hills. It's just like maybe 100-foot climb up. And then you go down 100 feet. And then you come up 100 feet. And then you go down 100 feet. And we're seeing people. And this is where like things started to get weird, I guess. So first we come across like a trail crew, and they're digging irrigation ditches. And you kind of just like, oh, cool. Like you're interesting. That's that's cool. Trail crew. We meet a family who is wholly unprepared for what they're about to, take on basically. It was very strange. They had no bags with them, no water, no food, and they were coming up. And then, well, I thought we walked in on some sort of mafia meeting for lunch or something, because it was just all these kind of old men basically sitting around in the middle of the woods. We're miles from anywhere. We're still just under. We're like a mile and a half from the trailhead now, right? And they have like nice chairs. They've got like a picnic. They've got like a little bit of alcohol. Like, you know, they're like nice and set up, and they got little sandwiches. And by this time, I had run out completely of water. My friend had run out of water. My roommate was just mooching off of me for water. Um, and so we're like, "What? How did they? Like, they weren't even carrying packs." It was very strange, like very, very, very strange. So we pass them, and I'm sure there's some sort of mob hit out on me now. We pass them. We're going down again. Make it down, and like the trail starts to basically widen. It's more of an ATV track. We see more people coming up, and we're okay. So we're close. We're close to trailhead. And finally the trailhead kind of comes into view. We're dusty, we're dirty, no water anymore, super hungry. And we kind of just sit in the car, and after this hike we kind of just like sit there and contemplate it. But that was just it was really fun, first off. Um, and it was really fun just because we got to, you know, relax, because it's not often that we get to relax. And the hike ended up being close to, I think, 10 miles. 10 miles, 4.5 hours, I want to say. 4 hours, maybe, which was brutal. And it was so hot out. And so that was kind of a little bit about our ridiculously crazy story that we had in the woods hiking. Of course, one of my roommates' adventures, I would call it. So those have been our two stories for today. One up in Canada, the other one, of course, close close to home. Next week, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about the Coulonge River, and probably a little bit more about this wholly ridiculous uh, Excalibur trip that I led, and a little bit about trying to plan a route by yourself and supply everything. As always, I've been Oliver Sanchez with Tales from a Wanderer.